She gave him her love, her trust, and was carrying his child. But when she discovered his affair, she didn't break. She plotted. What happened next left everyone speechless, including him. The soft golden glow of the evening sun seeped through the vast glass windows of the luxurious penthouse, casting long shadows across the marble floors. Amelia Reynolds, a devoted wife and soon-to-be mother, sat on the elegant cream-colored sofa, absently caressing the small yet unmistakable bump beneath her silk dress. The past few months had been challenging. Her body ached, the cravings were relentless, and yet, despite it all, she had never felt happier. She was bringing life into the world, a child she had prayed for, a child she had imagined raising with the man she loved, Nathan Reynolds. Nathan was a powerful man, a respected businessman with wealth, status, and an empire that spanned industries. When they had first met, he had been charming, attentive, and everything she had ever dreamed of in a partner. He had vowed to love her, protect her, and build a future with her. But lately, something had shifted. Amelia felt it in the way he no longer looked at her with warmth, the way his once passionate kisses had turned into brief pecks, the way he arrived home late every night with vague excuses and the lingering scent of perfume that did not belong to her. She had ignored it at first, convincing herself it was just her hormones playing tricks on her. Maybe she was just being paranoid. But then, the whispers began. A simple afternoon outing had turned into a nightmare when she overheard two women at a high-end boutique murmuring about Nathan's rumored affair. "Did you hear about Nathan Reynolds?" one woman had whispered. "He's been seen all over town with that new socialite, Victoria Monroe." Amelia had clutched the fabric of the maternity dress she had been admiring, her fingers tightening as she forced herself to remain composed. "It's a shame, really," the other woman had sighed. "His wife is pregnant, for God's sake, and yet he's out flaunting another woman like she's a trophy." The words had cut deep, slicing through the thin veil of denial she had wrapped around herself. That night, she had sat in the darkened nursery, staring at the crib she and Nathan had carefully picked out together. Had it all been a lie? Had he ever truly loved her? She knew she couldn't rely on mere gossip, but the gnawing doubt refused to leave her mind. And so, she made a decision, one that would change everything. That evening, as Nathan strolled through the front door with his usual nonchalance, Amelia greeted him with a soft smile, her expression unreadable. "How was work?" she asked, her voice calm, steady. "Busy," Nathan replied, loosening his tie. "Meetings, negotiations, you know how it is." She nodded, watching him carefully. "You must be exhausted. I made dinner." Nathan barely glanced at the dining table before shaking his head. "I already ate at the office." "At the office," she repeated, tilting her head slightly. "Or with Victoria Monroe." For the first time in weeks, she saw a flicker of hesitation cross his face. It was fleeting, almost imperceptible, but she caught it. "Amelia," he said slowly, choosing his words carefully. "Where is this coming from?" She inhaled deeply, steadying herself. "I need the truth, Nathan." He hesitated. Then, instead of denying it, instead of reaching for her and reassuring her like she had desperately hoped, he sighed. "You're pregnant, Amelia," he said, as if that justified everything. "I didn't want to stress you out." The room spun. Her breath caught in her throat. "So it's true," she whispered, the words barely escaping her lips. Nathan ran a hand through his hair, his expression laced with frustration. "Look, Amelia, things between us, they haven't been the same. You've been so focused on the baby and I—" "You what?" she interrupted, her voice trembling. "You decided to find comfort in another woman while I carry your child?" Nathan exhaled sharply, stepping away. "I don't want to fight, Amelia. Let's just—" She took a slow, deliberate step forward. "No, let's not. Let's do something better. Let's end this charade." Nathan's eyes widened slightly. "You don't mean that?" "Don't I?" she whispered. "Because I think I do." A tense silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. Nathan opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, Amelia turned on her heel and walked away. She didn't cry. She didn't break down. She was done playing the fool. As she lay in bed that night staring at the ceiling, a single thought burned in her mind. Nathan Reynolds had made the biggest mistake of his life, and soon he would realize it. Amelia woke up the next morning with an eerie sense of calm. The weight of the truth had settled within her, but instead of crushing her, it fueled her. Nathan had made his choice, and now she would make hers. She wasn't going to be the weak, devastated wife who begged for her husband's love. No, she was going to take control. If Nathan thought he could humiliate her, betray her, and still expect her to stay, he had another thing coming. The first thing she did was call her lawyer. "Mrs. Reynolds, it's good to hear from you." Mr. Calloway greeted her over the phone. He had been her family's attorney for years, a sharp and strategic man who never lost a case. "I need to initiate divorce proceedings," Amelia said, her voice steady. There was a slight pause before he responded. "I see. Are you certain about this?" "Absolutely." "Understood. Given the circumstances, I assume you'll want to ensure your financial security and that of your child." "Yes," she confirmed. "And I want to make sure Nathan doesn't see this coming. I need you to handle everything discreetly. I don't want him to know until the papers are ready to be served." Mr. Calloway let out a low hum. "I can certainly make that happen. We'll need to gather records of his assets, investments, and any evidence of infidelity that could work in your favor." The word infidelity made her stomach churn, but she refused to waver. "I already have a lead. I'll get you what you need." "Very well, I'll begin preparing the necessary documents." As soon as she hung up, Amelia took a deep breath. The first step was in motion. Now she needed proof. She had a suspicion that Nathan's affair wasn't just a fleeting mistake. A man like him didn't just suddenly stray. There had to be more beneath the surface. Instead of confronting him again, she decided to dig deeper. With a quick search on her phone, she pulled up Victoria Monroe's social media. The woman was exactly the type Nathan would be drawn to. Young, beautiful, and ambitious, though her ambition seemed to be more about securing wealthy men than actual success. Amelia scrolled through photos of Victoria, flaunting designer bags, luxury vacations, and high-end restaurants. Then she noticed something, a subtle detail that made her heart race. In one of Victoria's most recent posts, she had tagged a location, the Belrose Hotel, Suite 1503. Amelia's lips curled into a knowing smile. Nathan had told her he was away on a business trip that weekend. If her instincts were right, he hadn't been on a business trip at all. She immediately contacted a private investigator. "Mrs. Reynolds, what can I do for you?" asked a deep, composed voice on the other end. "I need evidence," she said simply. "I need photos, videos, anything that proves my husband is having an affair." The investigator, a man named Logan Pierce, didn't hesitate. "Consider it done. I'll have something for you within 48 hours. With that, Amelia set her phone down and exhaled. She was no longer acting on emotions. She was thinking strategically. Nathan had underestimated her, and he was about to regret it. The following evening, as she sat in the living room sipping tea, Nathan strolled in like nothing had changed. "How was your day?" he asked casually, loosening his tie. "Lovely," Amelia replied with a serene smile. "I had a productive meeting with my lawyer." Nathan froze for a second, but he masked it well. "Lawyer? For what?" "Oh, just discussing some future plans." She took a slow sip of tea, watching him carefully. Nathan nodded stiffly. "Good. I was thinking we should go to dinner this weekend. Maybe somewhere nice." She tilted her head. "Wouldn't Victoria mind?" A flicker of annoyance crossed his face. "Amelia, we talked about this." "No," she said, her tone cool. "You talked. I listened. But I've had enough of that." Nathan's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Instead, he walked past her, disappearing into his office. Amelia simply smiled. 2 days later, Logan delivered exactly what she needed. Photos of Nathan and Victoria entering the Belrose Hotel, videos of them laughing, embracing, completely oblivious to the world around them. It was undeniable proof. Amelia didn't cry, she didn't rage. She simply sent the files to Mr. Calloway and awaited the next step. That weekend, Nathan woke up to a cold, formal envelope sitting on his nightstand. Inside, the divorce papers lay crisp and unforgiving, along with a detailed breakdown of Amelia's demands, full custody of their child, a significant financial settlement, and sole ownership of their penthouse. Nathan stormed into the living room, the papers clutched in his fist. "Amelia, what the hell is this?" She looked up from her book, her expression calm. "Divorce papers, Nathan. I assume you recognize them." His face was a mask of anger and disbelief. "You can't be serious." "Oh, I'm very serious." She stood up, walking toward him with a quiet confidence that rattled him. "Did you think I'd sit around and accept your betrayal? That I'd let you disrespect me while I carried your child?" Nathan's hands curled into fists. Amelia, this is insane. We have a life together. Had a life together, she corrected, until you threw it away for Victoria Monroe. His lips pressed into a thin line. You don't have to do this. She let out a small laugh. Oh, but I want to, and trust me, I've made sure this will cost you. Nathan opened the documents, his eyes scanning the financial breakdown. His face paled as he realized what she had done. You're demanding this much? He asked, stunned. Amelia shrugged. It's what I deserve. And let's not forget, once this gets out, your reputation is going to take quite the hit. Nathan's shoulders tensed. He had spent years cultivating his public image. The last thing he wanted was a scandal. You wouldn't I? Amelia smiled sweetly. You didn't mind parading Victoria around town while I was pregnant. I'm simply making sure the world sees the kind of man you truly are. Nathan exhaled sharply, realizing he was trapped. You played this well, he admitted begrudgingly. She leaned in slightly, her voice soft but firm. I learned from the best. Nathan had always prided himself on being the most cunning person in the room, but now, for the first time, he realized he had underestimated his wife, and it was going to cost him everything. Nathan sat in his office, staring at the divorce papers laid out before him. His mind reeled as the reality of the situation sank in. He had thought Amelia would break down, beg, or at the very least, take time to process the betrayal. Instead, she had blindsided him, turning the tables before he even had a chance to react. He picked up his phone and dialed Victoria's number. We have a problem, he said the moment she answered. Her sigh came through the receiver. Let me guess, Amelia found out? She did more than just find out, Nathan muttered, rubbing his temple. She's divorcing me. And not just that. She's taking everything. Victoria clicked her tongue. Well, what did you expect? You are the one who cheated on her while she was pregnant. Nathan's irritation flared. You didn't seem to mind when you were sneaking around with me. She laughed, the sound light and unapologetic. I didn't, but I also didn't expect you to be stupid enough to get caught. His grip tightened around the phone. This isn't a joke, Victoria. If this divorce goes through the way she's planned it, I'll be left with almost nothing. My assets, my reputation, it's all on the line. There was a pause. So what do you want me to do about it? Nathan exhaled sharply. He hadn't thought that far ahead yet, but one thing was certain. He couldn't afford to let Amelia walk away with everything. I need to find a way to flip this situation in my favor, he muttered. There has to be something I can use against her. Victoria scoffed. Good luck with that. Amelia is practically untouchable. She's got a clean reputation, and with her family backing her, you're in a losing battle. Nathan clenched his jaw. She wasn't wrong. Amelia came from old money. Her father had built an empire, and she had inherited more than just wealth. She had power. If she wanted to, she could make his life hell. But Nathan wasn't one to back down. That night he spent hours making calls, contacting his lawyers, and digging for any leverage he could find. He needed something, anything that could turn the tide in his favor. The following day, he met with his attorney, Gerald Morrison, in a secluded corner of an upscale restaurant. Gerald adjusted his glasses as he flipped through the divorce documents. She's playing a strong hand, Nathan. She's already filed with a high-profile firm, and if this goes to court, you'll lose more than just money. You'll lose credibility. Nathan's fingers drummed against the table. There has to be a way to push back, something we can use against her. Gerald hesitated. If you're looking for dirt, you might not find any. Amelia has been careful her entire life. No scandals, no affairs, nothing that can be twisted in your favor. Nathan scowled. He had spent years being the one in control, the one who dictated the terms. Now it felt as though Amelia was 5 steps ahead of him, playing a game he wasn't prepared for. Then Gerald leaned in, lowering his voice. There is one thing. If you can prove that her mental state is unstable, you might be able to challenge her ability to raise the child. That could give you leverage in negotiations. Nathan raised an eyebrow. You mean make her seem unfit as a mother? Gerald nodded. It wouldn't be easy, but if you can create the narrative, it could work in your favor. Nathan leaned back in his chair, considering the idea. He had never thought of Amelia as unstable, but the pressure of pregnancy, the betrayal, and the stress of the divorce could easily push her to the edge. All he needed was the right evidence. A slow smirk formed on his lips. He had a plan. That evening, he went home to find Amelia sitting in the living room, reading through some documents. She looked up when he entered, her expression unreadable. "Busy?" he asked, keeping his voice neutral. She set the papers down and crossed her legs, just making sure everything is in order. Nathan took a seat across from her, feigning casualness. "You really think you're going to get everything you're asking for?" She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I don't think, Nathan. I know." His jaw tightened. "You're making a mistake, Amelia." Her eyes darkened. "No, you made the mistake when you betrayed me." Nathan exhaled through his nose, forcing himself to remain calm. "We don't have to go through this like enemies. We can make this easy on both of us." Amelia tilted her head. "You mean I should accept less than what I'm owed?" "No thanks." He studied her carefully. She was calm, too calm. If he was going to convince anyone that she was unstable, he would have to push her to the brink. "You know," he mused, leaning back, "I always wondered if you'd actually be able to handle motherhood." She stilled. Nathan smirked. "I mean, you've always been a bit high-strung. And now, with everything going on, I can't help but wonder, are you really in the right state of mind to raise a child?" Amelia's expression didn't change, but he noticed the way her fingers curled slightly. "You sound desperate," she said coolly. He shrugged. "Just being realistic." She stood up, walking toward him with slow, deliberate steps. "You can try to manipulate this however you want, Nathan, but it won't work. I know you better than anyone, and you hate losing." His smirk faltered slightly. She leaned in, lowering her voice. "You're panicking. You thought I'd break down, beg you to stay, but instead I'm making you pay. And now you're scrambling for a way to get control back." Nathan's fists clenched. Amelia stepped back, a triumphant smile playing on her lips. "Enjoy the rest of your evening, Nathan. You'll need all the rest you can get before this battle really begins." She walked away, leaving him standing there, seething. The next morning, he made his move. With the help of his lawyers, he arranged for a private evaluation of Amelia's mental health. He started planting seeds of doubt among their acquaintances. Small comments about how off she had been lately, how the pregnancy stress was making her erratic. He knew it would take time, but if he could spin the right story, he could make the world question her stability. What he didn't know was that Amelia was already a step ahead of him. As he set his trap, she was laying the groundwork for her own checkmate. Nathan sat in his lawyer's office, watching Gerald shuffle through the paperwork on the table. His plan was simple: make Amelia seem unstable enough to put pressure on her legal team. If they believed she wasn't mentally or emotionally fit to handle the legal battle ahead, they might be more inclined to negotiate for a lesser settlement. "She's too composed," Nathan muttered, drumming his fingers against the desk. "She's not reacting the way I expected." Gerald glanced up. "That's because she knows she's holding all the cards. She's been planning this longer than you think." Nathan scoffed. "She found out recently. How could she have planned this? Because she's smarter than you give her credit for." Gerald leaned back in his chair. "And because she's got powerful backing, you think she's going to war alone?" Nathan frowned. "What do you mean?" Gerald slid a file across the desk. "Amelia has been consulting with one of the top corporate divorce attorneys in the country, Carter Rothschild." Nathan felt a jolt of unease. Carter Rothschild wasn't just any lawyer. He was a legal shark who specialized in high-net-worth divorces, known for demolishing spouses who tried to outmaneuver his clients. "You're telling me Rothschild is representing her?" Nathan asked, barely keeping his frustration in check. Gerald nodded. "And that's not all. She's been in contact with financial auditors. I think she's investigating your assets." Nathan stiffened. "What?" "She wants to make sure you're not hiding anything before she takes what she's owed." Gerald tapped the file. "If you have any offshore accounts, shell companies, or hidden trusts, I suggest you prepare for them to come to light." Nathan clenched his jaw. He did have a few assets tucked away, money he had funneled into private holdings, anticipating a worst-case scenario. He had never expected to need them so soon. "She can't touch those," Nathan muttered. Gerald gave him a knowing look. "You'd be surprised what Carter Rothschild can dig up." Nathan exhaled sharply, frustration building. Amelia was not supposed to be this well prepared. She was supposed to be devastated, drowning in her emotions, not assembling a powerhouse legal team and digging into his finances. "She's playing dirty," he gritted out. Gerald chuckled. "Nathan, you cheated on a pregnant woman. If anyone's playing dirty, it's you." Nathan ignored the remark and stood. "Find out what else she's planning." Gerald nodded, but as Nathan left, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years: uncertainty. Back at home, Amelia was finalizing her own strategy. She sat in her study, going over the latest reports from her legal team. Across from her, Carter Rothschild reviewed the numbers. "He's already trying to discredit you," Carter said, tapping the file. "He's been making subtle remarks to mutual acquaintances, trying to create doubt about your mental state." Amelia didn't flinch. "I expected as much." Carter studied her carefully. "You don't seem worried." She smiled slightly. "That's because I'm not." Carter leaned back. "You know, most people in your situation would be panicking right now. But you're calm, methodical." "Because I know Nathan better than he knows himself," Amelia said. "He's predictable. He panics when he loses control, and that's exactly what I'm making him do." Carter smirked. "So, what's your next move?" Amelia placed a thick folder on the desk. "I want you to file a motion for full financial disclosure. He has hidden assets, I'm sure of it." Carter raised an eyebrow. "You think he's hiding money?" "I know he is," Amelia said firmly, "and when we find it, we'll use it against him." Carter grinned. "I like how you think." Nathan, meanwhile, was growing increasingly restless. His plan to rattle Amelia had done the exact opposite. It had only made her more resolute. As he paced in his office, his phone buzzed. It was Victoria. "What now?" he answered impatiently. "I heard something interesting today," she purred. Nathan sighed. "Unless it helps me win this divorce, I don't care." "Oh, but you will care," Victoria teased. "I was at lunch with a few women from Amelia's social circle. Guess who they mentioned?" Nathan frowned. "Just get to the point." "They said Amelia's been having very interesting meetings with a certain billionaire investor." Nathan's hand tightened around the phone. "Who?" Victoria let the silence drag before finally answering. "Liam Blackwood." Nathan froze. Liam Blackwood wasn't just a billionaire, he was a rival. A powerful, ruthless businessman who had been circling Nathan's ventures for years, waiting for a moment of weakness. "Are you sure?" Nathan asked, voice low. Victoria chuckled. "Oh, I'm sure. They said she's been meeting with him privately. Very privately." Nathan's grip on the phone tightened. Was she moving on already? Was she aligning herself with someone who could destroy him both personally and professionally? His chest burned with anger. He had expected Amelia to fight for herself, but this was something else entirely. If she had Blackwood backing her, he was finished. Slamming his phone down, Nathan stood and ran a hand through his hair. He needed a new strategy. Fast. 2 days later, Amelia arrived at a discreet penthouse overlooking the city skyline. Liam Blackwood stood near the window, a glass of whiskey in hand. He turned as she entered, flashing a charming smile. "I have to admit," Liam said, "I didn't expect you to reach out to me of all people." Amelia stepped forward, her confidence unwavering. "You and I have something in common, Liam." He raised an eyebrow. "And what's that?" "We both hate Nathan." Liam chuckled. "That's true." Amelia placed a folder on the table. "I need a financial partner to help me secure the assets I'm reclaiming from him. In exchange, I'll make sure that when this is over, Nathan is in no position to stand in your way ever again." Liam studied her for a moment before smirking. "I like your style." He extended his hand. Amelia took it. Nathan had no idea what was coming. Nathan paced in his office, frustration burning through his veins like wildfire. He had spent years building his empire, carving his name into the highest circles of influence, and now, in the span of weeks, Amelia was unraveling everything. He had underestimated her. That realization was as bitter as it was infuriating. Liam Blackwood. Nathan clenched his jaw, his mind racing. Blackwood was a cutthroat businessman, known for seizing opportunities like a vulture circling a dying animal. The fact that Amelia was aligning with him wasn't just a betrayal, it was a declaration of war. His phone buzzed. Gerald's name flashed across the screen. "Tell me you have something," Nathan snapped, answering the call. There was a pause before Gerald finally spoke. "Nathan, it's worse than we thought." Nathan's grip on the phone tightened. "What the hell does that mean?" Gerald sighed. "Amelia isn't just trying to take half of what you own. She's making moves to completely freeze your assets." Nathan stopped pacing. "Explain." "She's working with forensic accountants. They're digging deep into your finances, and with Rothschild leading her legal team, they'll find everything." Nathan's pulse quickened. "That's not possible. I've kept my personal accounts separate. They have records of transactions you made through offshore accounts, private investments you thought were untouchable. They're not. Nathan's mind reeled. He had set up those accounts years ago, money hidden away in case of an emergency. He never thought Amelia would go after them. What else? Nathan asked, his voice low. Gerald hesitated. She's also filed an injunction against Victoria. Nathan's stomach twisted. What? She's blocking Victoria from accessing any marital assets, claiming she benefited from misappropriated funds. If the court grants it, Victoria won't see a cent of your money. Nathan's fingers curled into a fist. Amelia was dismantling him piece by piece. She can't do this, he growled. She is doing this, Gerald said, and it's working. Nathan slammed his fist against the desk. What the hell does she want? Gerald hesitated before replying. It's not just about money, Nathan. She wants you to lose. Nathan exhaled sharply, trying to suppress the rage brewing inside him. But deep down, he knew Gerald was right. Amelia wasn't after revenge in the traditional sense. She wasn't slashing his tires or exposing his infidelity in the media. No, she was doing something far worse. She was making sure that when she was done, there would be nothing left for him to stand on. Nathan refused to let that happen. Across the city, Amelia was finalizing the next stage of her plan. She sat in a sleek office, her posture poised as Carter Rothschild went over the latest legal filings. We're making progress, Carter said, flipping through the documents. The financial inquiry is yielding results, and if we push forward, we can ensure that Nathan's assets remain frozen until the divorce is finalized. Amelia nodded, sipping her tea. And Victoria? Carter smirked. She's panicking. Her lawyers are scrambling to find loopholes, but so far they've got nothing. Amelia allowed herself a small smile. She had spent years being the dutiful wife, supporting Nathan's ambitions while ignoring the red flags. Now, she was done ignoring. Her phone buzzed and she glanced at the screen. A message from Liam. Blackwood Holdings just secured 3 of Nathan's key investors. He won't realize it yet, but he's about to take a serious financial hit. Amelia's smile widened. Liam Blackwood was proving to be an invaluable ally. He had resources and connections that even Nathan couldn't compete with. And the best part? He enjoyed watching Nathan suffer. She typed back a quick reply. Good. Let's keep the pressure on. Carter noticed the exchange and raised an eyebrow. Liam again? Amelia set her phone down. He's making sure Nathan feels the consequences of his choices. Carter chuckled. You two make a dangerous team. Amelia met his gaze, her expression unreadable. Nathan thought he could humiliate me, discard me like I was nothing. I'm simply reminding him that actions have consequences. Carter leaned back. And when this is over? Amelia exhaled. When this is over, I walk away with everything I deserve. Meanwhile, Nathan was in full crisis mode. His financial advisors sat across from him, their expressions grim. You need to act fast, one of them urged. If Blackwood keeps poaching your investors, your company's going to take a major hit. Nathan ran a hand through his hair. What about damage control? His advisor hesitated. Your reputation has taken a hit since the divorce went public. Investors are wary. Nathan's temper flared. So fix it. We're trying, the advisor said carefully. But right now you're vulnerable. Blackwood knows it, Amelia knows it, and they're using it against you. Nathan clenched his jaw. This wasn't just about money anymore. Amelia had aligned herself with one of his most dangerous competitors. And worst of all, she was winning. His phone buzzed and he answered without looking. What? Victoria's frantic voice filled his ear. Nathan, I just got a notice. My accounts are frozen. I can't access anything. What the hell is going on? Nathan gritted his teeth. It's Amelia. Fix it, Victoria screeched. Nathan inhaled sharply, his frustration reaching its boiling point. I'm working on it. Work faster, Victoria snapped before hanging up. Nathan slammed his phone down. Everything was slipping through his fingers. And Amelia. She was orchestrating it all like a damn symphony. That evening, Amelia received another call from Liam. Everything's in place, he said smoothly. Nathan won't know what hit him. Amelia gazed out at the city skyline. Good. Liam chuckled. I have to say, I'm impressed. Most people in your position would be too emotional to think clearly. Amelia's lips curved into a small smile. Emotions don't win wars, Liam. Strategy does. Liam hummed in agreement. So, what's next? Amelia's eyes darkened. Next, we finish this. Nathan sat in his dimly lit study, staring at the mountain of paperwork spread before him. His mind was a whirlwind of frustration, desperation, and barely contained rage. The empire he had built, the financial dominance he had cultivated was slipping through his fingers like sand, and it was all because of her. Amelia. She was dismantling everything he had worked for, and she wasn't just attacking his finances, she was striking at his very identity. Gerald had warned him that she was coming for blood, but Nathan had been arrogant. He had assumed she'd retreat, lick her wounds, and fade into obscurity. Instead, she had transformed into a force of destruction, one that was thriving on his downfall. Nathan exhaled sharply, trying to steady his thoughts. He wasn't a man who backed down from a fight, and he wasn't about to start now. A knock sounded on the door. "Come in," he barked. Gerald entered, his expression tense. He held a tablet in his hand, and the moment he stepped into the room, Nathan knew it wasn't good news. "You're going to want to see this," Gerald said, placing the tablet in front of him. Nathan glanced at the screen and felt his blood run cold. It was a headline, and not just any headline. Amelia Sterling partners with Liam Blackwood. Billionaire's ex-wife reclaims her empire. His eyes scanned the article, each word a dagger plunging deeper into his pride. Amelia had officially partnered with Blackwood, not just to freeze Nathan's assets, but to acquire his company's most valuable subsidiary, the one he had spent years developing, the one he had considered untouchable. "How?" Nathan whispered, his voice laced with disbelief. Gerald exhaled. "She's been working with Blackwood for months. You were so focused on the divorce that you didn't notice the moves she was making in the background." Nathan clenched his jaw. "I should have seen this coming." "She's smart," Gerald admitted. "She waited until you were vulnerable, and now she's hitting where it hurts the most." Nathan leaned back in his chair, his pulse pounding in his ears. She wasn't just trying to hurt him financially, she was trying to ruin him. And the worst part? She was succeeding. Across the city, Amelia sat in Liam Blackwood's office, sipping a glass of wine as she reviewed the final contracts. "Are you sure about this?" Liam asked, leaning back in his chair. Amelia met his gaze. "Absolutely," Liam smirked. "I have to say, Amelia, I didn't think you had this in you." Amelia tilted her head. "You mean you didn't think I could beat him?" "Oh, I knew you could beat him," Liam said, swirling his whiskey. "But I didn't think you'd do it so ruthlessly." Amelia's lips curled into a small smile. Nathan had underestimated her. Everyone had. But now she had control, she had power, and she wasn't done yet. Liam handed her a folder. "This is the final step. Once you sign this, Nathan's company won't just be crippled, it'll be yours." Amelia didn't hesitate. She picked up the pen and signed. There was no hesitation, no second guessing. Nathan Sterling had built his empire on arrogance and betrayal. Now she was taking it from him. Nathan stormed into his legal team's office the next morning, his face a mask of fury. "I want everything on Amelia's business dealings," he demanded, his voice cold. His lawyers exchanged uneasy glances. "Sir," one of them said carefully, "Amelia has played this brilliantly. Legally, she's done nothing wrong. She used her half of the marital assets to fund her ventures. It's all legitimate." Nathan slammed his fist onto the table. "There has to be something we can do." "We're looking," the lawyer said. "But so far, she's outmaneuvered you at every turn." Nathan exhaled sharply. His mind was racing, and he needed leverage. He needed something to break her momentum, and he needed it fast. That evening, Amelia attended a high-profile charity gala. Dressed in an elegant black gown, she moved through the crowd with ease, her presence commanding attention. Reporters whispered as she passed. The woman who took down Nathan Sterling. She was no longer just his ex-wife. She was a powerhouse in her own right. As she sipped her champagne, a familiar voice cut through the crowd. "Enjoying yourself?" Amelia turned. Nathan stood before her, dressed in a sharp tuxedo, his expression unreadable. Amelia smiled. "I am, actually." Nathan studied her, his jaw tight. "You've been busy." "I have," she said smoothly. "And so have you. Though I hear your ventures haven't been as successful lately." His eyes darkened. "You really think you've won?" Amelia raised an eyebrow. "Nathan, I know I've won." Nathan stepped closer, his voice dropping. "Be careful, Amelia. The higher you climb, the harder you fall." Amelia's smile didn't falter. "Oh, Nathan," she whispered. "I'm not the one falling." He stared at her, anger burning in his gaze. But deep down, he knew she was right. She had played the game. And she had won. Nathan left the gala with his fists clenched so tightly, his nails dug into his palms. The weight of his own failure pressed against his chest, suffocating, inescapable. He had built an empire from the ground up, spent years cultivating power, and yet, in mere months, Amelia had brought him to his knees. She wasn't just retaliating, she was destroying him. He climbed into his car, his driver silent as they pulled away from the venue. Nathan stared out the tinted window, his mind racing. He had spent so much time trying to control her, to prove his dominance, that he had never imagined a reality where she could outmaneuver him. And now she had. His phone buzzed. Gerald. Nathan exhaled sharply before answering. What? We found something. Nathan straightened. Talk. There's a company Amelia has been funding. A private investment firm that recently acquired several of your former assets. On paper, it's a separate entity, but if you dig deeper, Nathan's grip on the phone tightened. Are you saying she's hiding money? I'm saying she's funneling all her winnings into something bigger, Gerald clarified. She's not just playing defense anymore, she's playing the long game. Nathan's jaw ticked. Amelia wasn't satisfied with just taking what was his. She was building something greater, and she was making sure he could never rise again. Nathan turned to his driver. Go to my office. The man nodded, switching lanes as they sped toward Sterling Enterprises headquarters. Nathan needed to act, before Amelia buried him for good. Back at her penthouse, Amelia poured herself a glass of wine and sank into the plush couch, her muscles relaxing for the first time in weeks. The gala had gone exactly as planned. Nathan had tried to rattle her, but she had seen the fear in his eyes. He was losing. She had spent too long being the woman behind the powerful man, trapped in his shadow. Now, she was the force that shaped her own destiny. Her phone rang. She glanced at the screen. Liam. A smile tugged at her lips as she answered. Enjoying your victory? He asked, his voice laced with amusement. Immensely, she replied. There was a pause before Liam said, He's not going to stop, you know. I know. And you're ready for that? Amelia swirled the wine in her glass, watching the deep red liquid coat the sides. I was born ready. Liam chuckled. Then let's move to phase 2. She leaned back, her eyes gleaming. Let's. Nathan slammed the folder onto his desk, his eyes scanning every transaction, every signature, every acquisition Amelia had made over the last year. He hadn't paid attention before. He had been too arrogant. Now he saw the pattern. She wasn't just securing financial independence. She was outplaying him on every front. She had acquired his investors. She had absorbed his key assets. She had partnered with his competitors. And worst of all, she had done it right under his nose. His hands trembled as he picked up a document detailing a major real estate deal that Amelia's private firm had closed just weeks ago. A deal he had once pursued. A deal she stole from him. The office door swung open. Gerald stepped in, his expression grim. We've got a bigger problem. Nathan's patience snapped. Bigger than this? Gerald slid his phone across the desk. Read. Nathan picked it up, and then his blood ran cold. Breaking news. Amelia Sterling to announce new luxury development. Sterling Enterprises faces uncertain future. Nathan read the article once, then twice. She wasn't just taking his money, she was taking his legacy. His company, his father's company, was on the verge of collapse. And Amelia. She had already moved on to bigger things. Nathan shot to his feet, knocking over his chair. No, he snarled. I won't let her win. Gerald hesitated. Nathan, we have to be smart about this. Nathan turned to him, his eyes wild with fury. Smart got me here, he growled. Now I'm done playing fair. The next day, Amelia walked into her office, feeling invincible. She had every reason to. Her latest deal had just been finalized. The public was backing her, the business world was watching her, and Nathan was drowning. She stepped into her private elevator, her assistant trailing behind. Your 10 a.m. with the development team is confirmed, the assistant said, and we've received another request for an interview. Everyone wants to know how you... Her words cut off as the elevator doors opened. Amelia froze. Nathan stood in her office, leaning against her desk like he owned the place. For a brief second, panic flared in her chest. Then she straightened, her confidence returning. You're trespassing, she said coolly. Nathan smirked. This used to be my office, remember? Correction, Amelia said, stepping inside. It used to be my prison. Nathan's jaw tightened. You think you've won? I don't think, she said, setting her purse down. I know. Nathan pushed off the desk, stepping closer, but Amelia held her ground. I'm taking everything, Nathan, she whispered. Just like you took everything from me. His nostrils flared. I built this life, I built this empire. And I'm proving, she said, voice sharp, that you were never the mastermind you thought you were. A flicker of something crossed Nathan's face. Doubt. For the first time, real doubt. He exhaled sharply, stepping back. You won't get away with this. Amelia smirked. Watch me. Nathan's fists clenched at his sides. Then, without another word, he turned and strode out. As the doors slammed shut behind him, Amelia let out a slow breath. She had expected him to retaliate, but she wasn't afraid. Not anymore. She wasn't the woman he left behind. She was something much, much stronger. And this was only the beginning. Nathan stormed out of Amelia's office, his pulse pounding in his ears. The conversation replayed in his mind, each of her words cutting deeper than the last. She wasn't afraid of him anymore. That fact alone infuriated him more than anything else. He had expected Amelia to falter, to shrink back when confronted, but she hadn't. She had stood her ground. She had laughed in his face. Nathan clenched his jaw, shoving the glass doors open as he stepped into the main lobby of the Sterling Enterprises building. No, not Sterling Enterprises anymore. It was hers now. That was the real problem. For so long he had assumed he would always be in control, that no matter how far she ran, how much she tried to rebuild, she would never be more than his ex-wife. But he had been wrong, and now he was losing everything. He climbed into his car, gripping the steering wheel tightly as his driver pulled away from the towering glass skyscraper. Sir? Nathan turned his head slightly, glancing at Gerald through the rearview mirror. There's something else you should know, Gerald continued. Amelia's investment firm just secured another major deal. Nathan's fingers twitched. Which one? Gerald hesitated. The Aspen Resort project. Nathan's stomach dropped. That project was his last hope. The one deal that could have salvaged his company from complete ruin. He had spent months negotiating it, pulling strings behind the scenes, preparing a bid that would put him back in the game. And now, she had taken that too. Nathan's grip on the wheel tightened until his knuckles turned white. How, he bit out. She outbid you, Gerald admitted, by a significant margin. And not just that. She also secured a partnership with the bank backing the project. That means, Nathan cut him off with a sharp inhale. That means she's officially cut me out of the industry. Nathan exhaled slowly, his mind racing. He needed a new plan, he needed leverage, and he needed it fast. Back at her penthouse, Amelia sipped on a glass of champagne, basking in the victory. The Aspen deal had been her biggest move yet, the final nail in the coffin for Nathan's empire, and he knew it. She had seen it in his face today, the desperation, the realization that he was no longer in control. Amelia leaned back on the couch, exhaling slowly. She had waited so long for this moment. She had spent years feeling powerless, trapped in a loveless marriage, humiliated, discarded like she meant nothing. But now she had everything: power, wealth, independence, and most importantly, she had taken away the one thing Nathan had always cherished most, his dominance. Her phone buzzed on the table beside her. She glanced at the screen. Liam, a smirk tugged at her lips. Celebrating? He asked as soon as she answered. You could say that, Amelia mused. You should be careful, Liam warned. Nathan's not the type to go down quietly. Amelia's smirk widened. Oh, I'm counting on it. She knew Nathan would retaliate. He wasn't the kind of man who accepted defeat, but that was the beauty of it. The more he fought, the more he would lose. And when the dust finally settled, there would be nothing left of him. Nathan wasn't sleeping. For the first time in years, he felt completely unhinged. He had been drinking, pacing his study, replaying every moment of the last few months, trying to piece together how he had let things spiral so far out of control. He had underestimated Amelia, and now he was paying the price, but he wasn't done yet. He refused to let her win. Nathan grabbed his phone, dialing Gerald. Get me something on her, he ordered, his voice rough. Anything. I want leverage. I want her vulnerabilities. Find me a way to take her down. There was a beat of hesitation before Gerald spoke. There might be something, he admitted carefully. Nathan stilled. Talk. Gerald cleared his throat. Amelia's firm is still privately owned. That means she's self-financing most of her investments. And while she looks financially secure, there's been some risky plays. Nathan narrowed his eyes. What are you saying? Gerald exhaled. If someone were to push a few deals in the wrong direction, force a few delays, pressure certain investors, Nathan felt a smirk tug at his lips. Amelia was strong, but even she had limits. And if he couldn't destroy her outright, he would make her crumble from the inside. I want details, Nathan said darkly. Find out exactly where she's weak. Gerald hesitated. Nathan, if this backfires, it could ruin more than just her. It could ruin… I don't care. Nathan's voice was low, deadly. I'm not going down alone. The next week, Amelia noticed something was wrong. Her newest project, the Aspen deal, had suddenly been delayed. Investors were backing out. Contracts that had been airtight were suddenly under review. And all of it led back to Nathan. She sat in her office, hands folded in front of her, listening as her legal team listed off problem after problem. Nathan is behind this, Liam said, standing beside her desk. He's trying to sabotage you. Amelia exhaled, leaning back in her chair. Of course he is, she murmured. He couldn't win, so now he's trying to burn the whole house down. Liam watched her carefully. What do we do? A slow, dangerous smile spread across her lips. We let him play his little game. Liam raised an eyebrow. And then? Amelia's eyes gleamed. We end it. Nathan thought he was back in control. He thought he could manipulate the system, trip her up, throw her off course. But what he didn't realize, Amelia was 10 steps ahead of him. And by the time he realized it, it would already be too late. Nathan sat at his desk watching the numbers on his screen fluctuate. The stock market was a brutal battlefield, and today, Amelia was the enemy he needed to bring down. He had already put pressure on her investors, pulled strings with key partners, and ensured her biggest deals were on shaky ground. He smirked. She thought she could beat him. She had been nothing before him, and she would be nothing after him. Gerald walked in carrying a thick file. His face was tense, which only made Nathan more eager. What do you have? Nathan asked, sipping his whiskey. Gerald hesitated. Sir, Amelia is countering. Nathan stiffened. What? She's not just defending, she's striking back. Gerald placed the file on Nathan's desk. Look at this. Nathan flipped it open, his eyes scanning the contents. His breath hitched. She was buying out his company. It wasn't immediate, it wasn't an obvious direct attack, but it was smart. Amelia had been quietly acquiring minority stakes in his business, targeting investors who were frustrated with his leadership. She was turning them against him. Nathan's smirk vanished. How long has this been happening? For months, Gerald admitted. She's been positioning herself carefully. And now, if she secures a few more key partnerships… Nathan slammed the file shut. She wasn't just fighting back, she was trying to take everything. For the first time in years, he felt something rare, fear. Meanwhile, Amelia was calm. She sat in her office overlooking the city skyline. The game was playing out exactly as she had predicted. Nathan thought he had the upper hand. But what he didn't realize was that she had been preparing for this moment since the day he humiliated her. She had let him believe he was in control. She had let him think he could sabotage her. But now she was going to take everything from him. Liam walked in, shaking his head in disbelief. He's trying to counter you, but he doesn't realize it's too late. Amelia smiled. He doesn't. She had already secured half of his board members on her side. His company was bleeding money, and within weeks, she would own enough shares to force him out. Nathan Sterling, the man who had thrown her away like trash, was about to be removed from his own empire. And when that happened, he would finally understand what it felt like to be powerless. Nathan was spiraling. Everything he had built was slipping through his fingers. His board was losing faith in him. His investors were jumping ship. And the worst part? It was all Amelia. She was relentless, methodical, and completely devoid of mercy. Nathan stormed into his office, barely noticing the employees whispering as he passed. They had once feared him. Now, they pitied him. Gerald stood waiting, his expression was grim. It's over, he admitted. The vote is set for next week. If Amelia wins, you're out. Nathan clenched his fists. She won't win. Gerald exhaled. Nathan, she already has. The day of the vote arrived. The boardroom was silent, thick with tension. Nathan sat at the head of the table, cold and composed. Across from him, Amelia. She didn't look nervous, she didn't look triumphant, she just looked calm. Nathan hated that. He gripped the edge of the table as the votes were cast, one by one, and when the final vote was tallied, his world shattered. Nathan Sterling was officially removed from the company he had built, and the woman he had discarded? She was now in control of everything. Nathan sat alone in his penthouse, staring out at the city. His phone rang. It was Amelia. He didn't answer. A moment later, a message came through. "You never should have underestimated me." Nathan threw the phone across the room, breathing heavily. This wasn't over, but deep down, he knew it was. Nathan sat in the dimly lit bar, his fingers tightening around the whiskey glass. The amber liquid swirled, but his mind was in chaos. The same man who once had everything now had nothing. It had only been a week since the vote. 1 week since Amelia took everything from him. His empire, his board, his reputation, his pride. And now, he was just another fallen billionaire drowning in his own downfall. His penthouse was still his for now, but it felt empty, cold, nothing like before. His contacts, his so-called friends, had all vanished the moment his name lost its power. That was the thing about wealth and influence. People only cared when you had it. And Amelia? She had made sure he lost every last ounce of it. His phone buzzed. A final notice from one of his lenders. His money was bleeding faster than he could patch the wounds. His stocks were worthless now that investors saw him as a liability. His remaining assets? Tied up in lawsuits and settlements. Nathan gritted his teeth. It wasn't supposed to end like this. He was supposed to be the one winning. Amelia stood in her office looking out at the city skyline. The sun was setting, casting an orange glow over the towering buildings. She should have felt euphoric, and she had won. She had taken back everything that was stolen from her, but instead she felt empty. Liam walked in, holding a glass of champagne. "It's over," he said, offering it to her. Amelia took the glass but didn't drink. "Is it?" Liam sighed. "Nathan's done. His stocks have plummeted. The board is backing you. The company is flourishing under your leadership." He paused. "You did it, Amelia." She nodded slowly, her fingers tightening around the glass. Yes, she had done it. She had buried him, and yet a strange weight sat in her chest. Maybe it was because Nathan wasn't the only thing she had lost. She had lost a part of herself along the way. The part that once believed in love. The part that hoped Nathan would come back to his senses. She exhaled, pushing the thought aside. This wasn't about love. It never was. It was about justice, and justice had been served. Nathan didn't know what pulled him back to her. He should have been in his office fighting to salvage what little he had left. But instead he found himself standing outside Amelia's building. It was his building once. Now, it belonged to her, the woman he had thrown away, the woman he had humiliated, and the woman who had risen from the ashes to burn him alive. His jaw clenched as he watched the employees coming and going, all of them looking happy, confident, secure. He had built this company, but Amelia had saved it, and that was the truth he didn't want to admit. He had become reckless, arrogant, cruel. He had let power consume him until he lost sight of everything that mattered. Now, she was running things better than he ever could. And deep down, Nathan knew he deserved this. But knowing didn't make it hurt any less. Amelia stepped out of the building, her assistant following behind with a tablet. She was giving instructions when she saw him. Nathan, standing there, looking lost. For a moment, the world around them blurred. It was just the two of them again, the man she had once loved and the man who had shattered her. And now, he was nothing but a broken shell. She exhaled, steadying herself. This was not her problem. She turned to her assistant. "Move the car to the front. I don't want to be late for my meeting." Nathan took a step forward. "Amelia." Her assistant hesitated, glancing between them. Amelia didn't blink. Nathan swallowed. His voice was hoarse, rough. "Can we talk?" Amelia tilted her head slightly, studying him. The Nathan Sterling who had once looked untouchable now stood defeated. She could see the desperation in his eyes, the silent plea he wouldn't dare speak out loud. But it was too late. She offered him a small, almost pitying smile. "There's nothing left to talk about, Nathan." And with that, she walked past him, without a second glance. Nathan stood frozen, the weight of those words crushing him. She was really gone. Nathan didn't sleep that night. Her words replayed in his head over and over. There's nothing left to talk about. He knew he had ruined it. He had ruined everything. But that didn't mean he had to accept it, and he had lost his company, and he had lost his reputation. But Amelia, he wasn't ready to lose her. Not yet, because for the first time in his life he realized what he had truly lost. And this time, he wasn't going down without a fight. Betrayal, power, and redemption. Amelia took back everything that was stolen from her, but is this truly the end? Will Nathan accept his downfall, or will he fight for a second chance? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories, or powerful stories, or powerful stories.